Jiang Ming woke up with the power of immortality. Faced with the cruel and dangerous cultivation world, Jiang Mingwu embarked on his own path of cultivation. That's it, only practicing forbidden techniques. Burning Blood Sabre Technique, with each slash, 1 year of life is lost. EP1-10 first. The holy body of 100 calamities, 3 layers of 1 heavenly calamity. Refined to 100,000 layers. The Heavenly Yanshu, when used, will inevitably be backfired by fate. I will first calculate the color of the saint's clothes tomorrow. To break the illusion of spiritual eyes, one needs to look directly at indescribable things, the birth and death path, washed away by the underworld of the underworld, every day practicing and practicing. Jiang Ming discovered that his forbidden technique was invincible in the world. Keywords of the novel. Immortal, I only practice forbidden techniques without pop-ups. Immortal, I only practice forbidden techniques. Download the complete set of TXT, Immortal, I only practice forbidden techniques. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Immortality. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Immortality. Yan State, Daiyan Prefecture, Yunmengshanzai. At noon in scorching summer, heat waves sweep through the mountains and forests, blowing grass and trees to make rustling sounds. Jiang Ming opened his eyes in a daze, feeling intense pain all over his body. He struggled to turn his head and found himself lying in a piece of gravel, dressed in coarse cloth and covered in blood. What happened? I was blowing the air conditioner and singing songs, brushing the little sister with a big face. Why did I suddenly become like this in a blink of an eye? Suddenly, fragmented memories flooded into my mind. A young man named Jiang Ming, who had just turned 16 years old, his parents had died early, his body was weak, and he made a living by going up the mountain to pick herbs. Today on a cliff, Jiang Ming discovered a rare herb and wanted to take the risk of picking it. However, he didn't expect to slip and fall directly from a cliff over 10 meters high, with bones and tendons broken and his life in despair. Damn it! As the esteemed starting point reading saint, Jiang Ming instantly understood the situation. Stop pretending, show off, I've traveled. Jiang Ming took a deep breath and calmed his mood. He glanced at the palm of his left hand and indeed grasped a red and strange grass. Looking back at his predecessor's memories, it is revealed that this is a strange world where great power belongs to himself. Everything is inferior, except for his high martial arts skills. The Yen kingdom he is in was founded by an invincible martial arts master. Legend has it that there are immortal beings who fly from heaven to earth. Suspected of crossing into the world of cultivation, but what does this have to do with him? At this moment, Jiang Ming was just an unlucky person who was seriously injured and could easily collapse at any time. Isn't there a system to save me? Simulator. Dark blue with a touch. There was no response. Jiang Ming is a bit panicked. How to play with a serious injury at the beginning. Suddenly, he seemed to see inside himself. In my mind, a dot of light floats and sinks, as if it has existed forever. At this moment, the light burst like a supernova, suddenly bursting with endless light. The light carries infinite power and permeates every inch of his muscles and every drop of blood. All of Jiang Ming's wounds were recovering at a visible speed to the naked eye, and all the broken bones were being repaired in an instant. When Jiang Ming regained his senses, the light had already converged and shone like an eternal star, stretching across his mind. At the same time, a strand of information was also transmitted to Jiang Ming's consciousness. Not extinguishing the source light can ensure the host's immortality and immortality. Is this my golden finger? Jiang Ming murmured, knowing through this thread of information that the indestructible source light had merged with his consciousness. Even if the physical body is destroyed and the soul is scattered, it can still be reborn and immortal. He tried to stand up, and there was no discomfort in his body. It seems that Xiaoming has been temporarily saved. However, Jiang Ming did not forget his pride. I have seen too many things like immortality in movies, such as various unlucky immortals bound, caged, sliced, and bled, as well as those used as sustainable rations. He couldn't help but shiver. His golden fingers were no different from Tang Monk's flesh, and he couldn't be too high profile. The pig's foot route of fighting bravely, fighting fiercely, and becoming famous all over the world is absolutely unacceptable. Of course, besides that, this golden finger is quite good. Longevity is not an invincible path, but it means infinite possibilities. Whether in past and present life, technological civilization, or cultivation civilization, life expectancy is an eternal challenge that affects personal development and even civilization progress. Scientists from previous lifetimes, due to their limited lifespan, could only learn the knowledge of their predecessors and spend decades. When they finally had the resources and strength to challenge higher scientific peaks, they were already in their twilight years and could only regretfully leave. The same goes for cultivating immortals. No matter how proud you are, you will be unparalleled in your glory, and in the end, you will end up with a pile of yellow soil. Who can see immortality, which can become immortal? A limited lifespan is like an endless black barrier, blocking everyone in a small well, desperately trying to jump out, but unable to achieve it. And now, Jiang Ming is like a frog jumping out of a deep well. Although very weak, it has infinite possibilities. As long as it lives steadily, it will one day stand at the highest point of the world, watching endless scenery for hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years. The premise of all of this is not to be discovered by the big shots, to tie up the slices. Jiang Ming muttered to himself. We must persevere, and in the end, we will have everything we need. What kind of martial arts master or immortal in the world? When you die, I will go dig graves and search for treasures. Can't I? Just as Jiang Ming was unleashing himself and daydreaming, a rustling sound of footsteps suddenly came from not far away. A middle-aged man carrying a medicine basket and patched clothes appeared in front of him. Amin. The visitor was somewhat surprised and said. Jiang Ming looked up and saw that this person had a yellow and skinny face, sunken eye sockets, and a look of depleted blood and energy. He was staring at him with a wandering gaze, and a wooden knife in his hand was a bit shaky. Jiang Ming recognized him and was also a medicinal herb collector at the foot of the mountain. He only knew his name was Huang Laogui, but he didn't have much interaction in his daily life. Every herb picker has their own route, and the secret to the growth of some rare herbs is even more undisclosed. Encountering other herb pickers in the mountains is not a joyful thing to drink and have fun with. Jiang Ming looked at him without speaking. Did you get injured while picking herbs? Is it serious? Huang Laogui, however, expressed concern and his gaze fell on Jiang Ming's hand, with a hint of warmth flashing in his eyes. Jiang Ming's heart sank. Grandpa, he was too excited just now and neglected. No, it's not serious, just take a break, he quickly replied. Huang Laogui chuckled hoarsely and said, if it's okay, it's good. Ah Ming, you're really lucky. You found a fire cloud grass that can sell for 30 taels of silver. It's enough to eat and wear for several years without worrying. I'll also hurry into the mountain and see if I can try my luck. He waved his hand and continued walking forward. Jiang Ming took a deep breath and seemed to let go of his guard. However, just as the two were about to slip up, Huang Laogui's eyes suddenly showed a fierce light. Little rabbit, go to hell. He raised the firewood knife in his hand and thrust it fiercely towards Jiang Ming's chest. Damn you, Grandpa. Jiang Ming's eyelids twitched. He had anticipated that this guy wouldn't have a good heart, but he didn't expect that the other party would just want to kill him. The local gang is too impolite. Without hesitation, Jiang Ming pulled out a medicine shovel from his waist and slashed it fiercely towards Huang Laogui's neck. The medicine shovel has been sharpened by mountains and stones all year round, and is sharper than an ordinary blade. As long as it cuts the skin and flesh, it will splatter blood 3 feet. However, in Huang Laogui's eyes, there was a disdainful expression, and the boy was still too tender and slow to react. Pushi the firewood knife pierced into Jiang Ming's heart, piercing through his back and causing a string of bloodstains. Ha ha ha, with this fire cloud grass, I'll. Huang Lao Gui laughed heartily and reached out to take the fire cloud grass. In his view, Jiang Ming, who had been stabbed in the heart, had no resistance left. However, in the moment he let go of his guard. A little cold light suddenly flashed before his eyes. Fast and ruthless. Hissed the medicine shovel sliced through the skin and flesh, as if a knife had cut through a piece of paper. A blood line quietly appeared on Huang Lao Gui's neck, and then the blood gushed out like waves. You, how, cough. He stared at Jiang Ming incredulously, but his throat was blocked by blood and he couldn't say anything. In front of him, Jiang Ming was stabbed with a firewood knife, bleeding profusely. He gritted his teeth in pain, but still stood steadily. Since ancient times, who has never died? Why only strive for the day and night? Jiang Ming looked at Huang Laogui and spat out blood foam fiercely. Under Huang Laogui's frightened gaze, Jiang Ming gasped for breath and slowly pulled out a firewood knife from his chest, aiming it at his neck and then slashing it again. Pup blood splashed and surged, and Huang Laogui died completely. The new book has set sail. Please recommend more tickets and collect more, thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Tasting 100 Grasses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Tasting 100 Grasses. Damn it, it hurts me so much. Jiang Ming finally breathed a sigh of relief, threw away the firewood knife, and sat on the ground panting heavily. Killing someone was also his first time, and it was a bit exciting. However, Jiang Ming did not regret it. If you were alive, it would definitely bring me a lot of trouble, so I can only ask you to sacrifice for the bigger picture. The wound on his chest slowly healed, and Jiang Ming looked at the body beside him without any mercy. Instead, he had a deeper understanding of his own situation. With low strength, one's life is as low as earth, and anyone can step on it. According to the memory of his predecessor, even if he didn't encounter Huang Laogui today, he would still be exploited layer by layer when selling this fire cloud grass, and even attract a disaster of blood and light. It is fortunate that a medicinal herb worth 30 taels of silver can be safely bagged with 100 or 10 copper coins. It's too suffocating to continue like this. Go is also divided into different methods. The turtle retracts its head into its belly, and Go is still an old turtle that has been scribbled on its shell. Jiang Ming doesn't want to be an old turtle. Godao is not a cowardly way. Only by becoming stronger can we achieve greater stability. So the first goal is to quietly practice martial arts, become powerful, and live better. Jiang Ming sorted out his thoughts, feeling that his thoughts were clear and suddenly enlightened. He went to the cliff to tidy up his fallen firewood knives, medicine baskets, and other items, ready to leave. As for the body of Huang Laogui, he didn't worry too much. In his impression, this guy had been walking alone, often going to the mountains for a month or so, rarely interacting with others, but he always reaped a lot. When someone remembers, they probably have been gnawed into a pile of bones by wild beasts long ago. Every year, there are not 7 or 8 herb pickers who accidentally stumble into the mountains, but 3 or 4. Those who fall off cliffs, encounter jackals, eat poisonous mushrooms. Not many of them. However, you're all dead. It's not easy on hot days. I can't get a knife for nothing. Jiang Ming muttered to himself, his hand already touching Huang Laogui's body and beginning to explore. A string of copper plates, only around 20. Insect repellent powder. A few pieces of dry food to satisfy hunger. Jiang Ming suddenly widened his eyes. He surprisingly pulled out 2 pieces of broken silver, adding up to an estimated 1 or 2. So rich. Jiang Ming was uncertain. Silver is not an ordinary thing. 1 or 2 silver coins are worth 1,000 copper coins. Even an ordinary herb picker cannot save so much in a few years, let alone carry it with them when going up the mountain. This guy has a secret, Jiang Ming felt more carefully as he moved his heart. However, he didn't touch anything for a long time. Just as he was about to give up, he suddenly realized something was wrong. On Huang Lao Gui's tattered clothes, there is an inconspicuous gray-white patch that doesn't feel like coarse linen or rags, but rather like a high-quality piece of animal skin. Tear and pulled Jiang Ming pulled off the patch as big as his palm and flipped left and right. This is. His gaze fixed. The back of the animal skin patch is filled with densely packed pitch-black small characters. Thanks to learning how to read from an old neighbor for a few days, Jiang Ming stumbled over a rough idea. Prescription. Jiang Ming suddenly realized why Huang Lao Gui was rich and always looked like he was lacking in energy and blood. This is a prescription that uses human blood as the main medicine, but it is intended for animals to take. After taking this medicine, ordinary birds and beasts can give birth to a trace of spirituality and gradually submit to the person who provides blood for their drive. In his previous memory, Huang Lao Gui did indeed feed animals such as cats, dogs, and rabbits. It seems that he used his own blood to refine medicine, driving animals into the mountains to search for medicine for him, and thus earned a lot of money. However, in my memory, the animals raised by Huang Lao Gui have undergone many changes. After all, even seasoned herb pickers can easily get injured in the mountains, let alone newly born spiritual domesticated animals, which are simply adding food to the wild beasts in the mountains. As for why Huang Lao Gui didn't directly raise wild animals in the mountains, Jiang Ming speculated that it was because wild animals were more difficult to tame and required a larger amount of medicine. Huang Lao Gui is just an ordinary person. Feeding ordinary cats and dogs already results in a loss of qi and blood. How dare he have the idea of taking wild beasts for ordinary people? This is simply a technique that harms the body, but for me, these problems don't exist at all. Jiang Ming's eyes lit up, and he had a premonition that this prescription might have a significant effect in his hands. He carefully took the animal skin into his arms, and then took away the silver, money, and food. He didn't touch anything left by Huang Lao Gui. After all, he might be recognized by someone. Recalling the usual route of picking herbs, Jiang Ming put on his worn-out bamboo hat, picked up his medicine basket and continued walking towards the mountains, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. Along the way, Jiang Ming also picked some herbs based on his memory, but some of them looked too similar, so he could only taste and distinguish. For other herb collectors, eating herbs indiscriminately is an extremely dangerous behavior, but for Jiang Ming, there is only a distinction between delicious and not delicious. Even the highly poisonous herbs only caused Jiang Ming's stomach to ache for a moment. Later on, Jiang Ming even walked and tasted all the plants he saw, almost tasting them all and remembering to classify them in his heart. Stomach pain, highly toxic. Can refresh, but has diarrhea. Bitter taste, slightly toxic, may have unknown efficacy. The taste is good, like sweet potato leaves, grab more for dinner. Poisonous mushrooms. As time passed, Jiang Ming shuttled through the deep mountains and forests, taking turns using tools such as a medicine shovel, a small hoe, and a medicine-picking sickle. His medicine-picking skills also gradually improved. Since he has traveled through time to become a medicine harvester, he plans to play this role well first. As the saying goes, there is a specialization in the craft industry, and one must work hard to become familiar with the skills. The dusk in the mountains comes silently. Unconsciously, the pine trees are solemn, the rocks are dim, and the tree shadows sway and float in the mist. The air has become stuffy and hot, and the sky is shrouded in dark clouds, as if there will be a heavy rain. Jiang Ming lifted the medicine basket onto his shoulder, quickened his pace, and rushed towards a cliff in his memory. At night in the mountains and forests, it is even more dangerous than during the day. Poisonous insects and ferocious beasts roam around, making it easy for one to fall ill. Every herb collector has several familiar hiding places. Soon, the dark clouds obscured the last ray of sunlight, and there was a faint thunder coming. In front of Jiang Ming's eyes, there finally appeared a rocky and low cliff, like a strange black monster lurking in the mountains and forests. He climbed up and, halfway up the low cliff, dug open a dry vine, and suddenly a small cave appeared in front of him. In the cave, there is a broken pottery jar, 2 rotten bowls, a few dry branches, and some dried animal feces thrown away. Fortunately, I remember correctly. Jiang Ming breathed a sigh of relief, put down the medicine basket and miscellaneous items, and slightly cleaned the cave. Rumble, he had just finished everything when a thunderbolt suddenly exploded, and raindrops the size of soybeans fell with a crackling sound, pouring down in the blink of an eye. Click, the dazzling lightning illuminated the mountains and forests, leaving a dead silence where all spirits lay dormant. Only the majesty of the sky was brilliant, and the sound of wind, rain, and lightning, like the sound of a divine oracle, struck into the hearts of all living beings, making them awe-inspiring and intoxicated. Tonight is actually safe. Jiang Ming smiled. Animals are sometimes more intelligent than humans, have a greater reverence for the power of heaven, and do not run around seeking food at this time. He carried a broken pottery jar to the entrance of the mountain, washed it casually with rainwater, and brought back another jar of rainwater, ready to have a pot of stew for dinner. After a long struggle with flint, Jiang Ming finally lit the dry firewood. He put the pottery jar on the shelf and began preparing the ingredients. The main dish was undoubtedly huiyun grass. Jiang Ming casually cut it into sections and threw it into a pottery jar, just like sweet potato leaves. This huiyun grass is of great value, but Jiang Ming is well aware of the principle of harboring guilt. This fire cloud grass can make Huang Lao Gui want to kill, and it can also make others greedy. Instead of taking risks to fight for 100 or 10 copper coins, it's better for me to eat it myself. He looked curiously and said, I heard this thing can nourish qi and blood, and is a great tonic for practicing martial arts. I wonder if it's true or not. Now that Jiang Ming's body is weak, he urgently wants to practice martial arts and become stronger. He naturally looks forward to the medicinal effect of this fire cloud grass. Then, he took out a pile of colorful mushrooms from the medicine basket and stuffed them into a pottery jar. Watching them rumbling in boiling water, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. In my previous life, I wanted to eat but didn't dare. In this life, I finally caught the opportunity. Let's give it a big show first. I heard that the more poisonous it is, the more delicious it is. Soon, the rich aroma spread and made Jiang Ming's fingers twitch. Outside the cave, the rainstorm was torrential and the night was bleak. In the cave, the firewood crackled and the thick soup bubbled. Jiang Ming sat quietly, with various thoughts flashing through his heart. The confusion and excitement of arriving in a new world, the fear of being discovered and the restlessness and excitement of exploring the unknown, and the restlessness and excitement of wanting to become stronger gradually, thousands of emotions peeled off, leaving only the rain in front of me, piercing through heaven and earth. Since we have already entered this situation, what can we fear? It's just from heaven to earth. Requesting recommended tickets, please remember to bookmark them after reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. After drinking a glass of wine, there is no old friend in this world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. After drinking a glass of wine, there is no old friend in this world. In the dim and cold cave, some flames flickered brightly, and a jar of mushroom soup filled with fragrance. Jiang Ming regained his senses and scooped a bowl full of rotten soup. In the golden soup, there was a hint of fiery red light, which looked very strange. I'm afraid this bowl of soup can topple an elephant. Looking at the colorful mushrooms in the soup, Jiang Ming couldn't help but grin, and then eagerly drank while blowing hot air. After taking a sip of thick soup, it was so fresh that it almost melted Jiang Ming's tongue. Various mushrooms were also extremely delicious, and an unknown scorching force rushed from the stomach to the limbs and bones, following the heat of the mushroom soup. Jiang Ming almost moaned comfortably, and the chill of the rainy night was instantly dispelled. His whole body was warm and full of strength. Is this the power of Huiyan grass? Jiang Ming was extremely surprised, as his frail body seemed to be cheering and eager for the soup in front of him. He immediately unleashed all his firepower and eliminated the remaining mushroom soup. Drinking and drinking, there seemed to be a little person dancing in front of me, but it quickly disappeared as his body gradually warmed up. Jiang Ming's thoughts also gradually became lively. Huiyan grass, Yubeast medicine prescription. These things are definitely not something that can be seen casually in an ordinary martial arts world. It seems that it is indeed a world of cultivating immortals, but I don't know if there are really immortals in this world. The immortal path is ethereal, and thinking too much is futile. Currently, only martial arts is the only way to become stronger. Jiang Ming took a deep breath, suppressed his doubts, and lay down in his clothes by the fire, gradually falling asleep. The wind and rain are still raging outside, and there are thunder blasts from time to time. The fire in the small cave is getting weaker and darker. The next morning, the rain dissipated and the clouds dispersed. The sky is clear like a mirror, with wisps of sunlight passing through the vines and shining into the cave. Jiang Ming stood up with a bow over his waist, looking down in confusion. The hardest thing in the world now is no longer steel, this medicine is too strong. Jiang Ming was speechless, feeling hot and dry all over. He cleared the vines and walked out of the cave, took a deep breath of the fresh air after the rain, and then stood on a huge rock, starting to use a set of strong physical boxing techniques. Medicine and martial arts are not separated. The herb pickers are also considered to be involved, and they all have their own ways to strengthen their bodies and nourish their qi. Jiang Minglian's martial arts are not well known, but they still have some effects. He punched his fist repeatedly and could feel the medicinal power spreading in his body, slowly increasing his strength. Even the thin and weak body seems to have become harder. Such strong medicinal power seems to be not only the fire cloud grass, but also the amazing medicinal effects of those poisonous mushrooms. It's just that ordinary people don't enjoy it. If that's the case, then this Yunmengshan Zhe is a huge treasure for me. Treasures like Huiyan grass are hard to find, but it's not a problem to find some highly toxic fungi or herbs. There are some herbs in my memory that contain impressive medicinal effects, but they are extremely toxic. Ordinary pharmacists cannot handle them at all, and even if they can, the cost is higher than the profit. Basically, no one picks them. If Jiang Ming uses these herbs and poisonous bacteria as resources for practicing martial arts, then his path of martial arts will definitely be twice the result with half the effort. After practicing for over an hour, the heat and dryness finally subsided. Keep picking herbs. With a goal in mind, Jiang Ming was full of energy. After nibbling on some dry food, he picked up his medicine basket and continued to move forward according to his memory. After the rain, the mountains and forests are open and fresh, with raindrops on the grass leaves and occasional chirping of insects and birds echoing in the forest. In the deep mountains and forests, only Jiang Ming walked alone, like a thirsty apprentice, constantly tasting every herb and becoming familiar with various picking techniques. Most herbs are delicate, some roots and stems cannot be damaged, some only require unopened flower buds, and some fruits need to be collected in the morning to prevent pod bursting. Even with memories of his predecessor, Jiang Ming didn't know how many herbs he had collected, and only then did he feel that his level had made significant progress. 2 days later. In the early morning, the crescent moon still hangs in the sky. Jiang Ming walked out of the Yunmeng Mountain Zhe in the morning mist, with water dripping from his bamboo hat. He carried a basket full of herbs and arrived at a gathering place for refugees at the foot of the mountain. In fact, Jiang Ming can continue to stay in the mountains, but according to his predecessor's habits, he usually comes back to rest for a few days after entering the mountains for 3 or 4 days. He's new here and doesn't want to be too catching wisps of cooking smoke rose in front, scattered in rudimentary thatched houses, with people coming and going, filled with the smell of fireworks. At first, there were only a few medicinal gatherers living here, but later on, the poor people who couldn't survive in the city of Dian Mansion gradually gathered here. When the officials in the city came for an outing, they showed great kindness and personally proposed a name with an excellent meaning, Pinyin Town. As soon as Jiang Ming arrived at the entrance of the town, a young official wearing worn-out soap clothes walked over from the roadside and lazily looked at Jiang Ming, saying, "Check." Jiang Ming skillfully stuffed 2 copper coins over, and the clerk immediately showed a satisfied smile. He casually flipped through the medicine basket, borrowed 2 pieces of yellow essence, and waved his hand to let Jiang Ming go. At the same time as showing kindness, the official did not forget to be prepared for danger and pointed out in advance that there may be bandits in the mountains. Therefore, he sent small officials to guard here at the risk of their lives to check if there were any dangerous people causing trouble. It is only natural for the people to be moved and send some silver coins and specialty products, but until now, no one has seen what the bandits look like. Life is so comical and difficult, but fortunately the world is still relatively peaceful. His predecessor was introverted and low-key, and he didn't cause any trouble. Jiang Ming plans to continue to maintain it without any sense of mission to rise up. Entering the town and greeting some face-to-face herb pickers, Jiang Ming walked into a small tavern. Speaking of a tavern, it is actually just a larger thatched hut, with dirty and tattered wine flags, and a dim and chaotic environment inside. The tables and chairs are all in a state of disrepair, but it is one of the few entertainment venues in this town. There are many people in the tavern, mostly shabby men dressed in tattered clothes, some picking herbs and some hunting and chopping firewood. While drinking alcohol, they boast about their knowledge from all over the world. The mountain is humid, and many people come here to drink a bowl of wine to dispel cold and dampness before or after entering the mountain. Over time, drinking morning wine has become a unique custom in Pinyin Town. Even if there is nothing to do, many people come to drink a bowl and chat, numbing the worries in life. Jiang Ming threw the medicine basket at an empty table, walked straight to the counter, and took 2 copper coins. A bowl of tongue running, a plate of smoked tofu. Running tongue is the cheapest wine here, 1 copper coin per bowl, with only one characteristic, which is its strength. If you take 1 bite, your tongue will be numb and your whole body will be steaming hot, making it the best choice for dispelling the cold. Behind the counter, there was the owner of the tavern, old Jiang Tu, with gray and sparse hair. He knew all the medicinal gatherers like Jiang Ming and immediately smiled, saying, "Look at you with a bright red face. Did you get a good harvest?" "What's good?" almost fed the wolf. Jiang Ming casually joked and sat down with dishes. I took a big sip of alcohol and felt a scorching sensation from my throat to my chest and abdomen. Then, I picked up a piece of smoked and yellowed tofu, dipped it in chili sauce, and stuffed it into my mouth. The aroma of strong liquor and tofu intertwined in his mouth, and Jiang Ming smashed his mouth, listening to the surrounding drinkers boasting and chattering. I heard that the reward offered by the Wang family has been increased to 50 taels of silver. So what? Huyunko is not a cabbage, where can I find it? If I can find it, I'll go pack the flower leader from Qinghe Tower, Miss Schwer, for 3 days and 3 nights first. Shaolyozi, that's a bamboo skewer stirring a big vat. Can you withstand it? Ha ha ha. Jiang Ming raised his eyebrows and silently sipped his wine. The people in the tavern came and went, and some familiar herb pickers also came. Jiang Ming greeted them one by one. No one has mentioned Huang Lao Gui, after all, it has only been a few days, and many people who have been drilling in the mountains for 10.5 days are there. At 3 strokes of the sun, Jiang Ming licked the tofu plate clean, took the last sip of wine, and shook away with a medicine basket. After drinking a glass of wine, there is no old friend in this world. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Difficulties in life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Difficulties in life. In the morning, the sky and earth are dark, and the cold wind is piercing through the bones. In the bamboo fence courtyard at the foot of the mountain, Jiang Ming bared his upper body and rolled his pants up to his knees, practicing his martial arts in the darkness. Sweat the size of soybeans kept dripping down, wetting a patch of yellow soil until the sky gradually brightened and scattered human voices could be heard in the distant fields. Jiang Ming finally stopped panting heavily, his whole body steaming with heat, and the muscle lines between his shoulders and spine were faintly visible. It has been 2 days since Jiang Ming returned from the mountains, and he keeps practicing martial arts every morning. The medicinal power of huiyang grass and poison mushroom still has remnants, making him twice as efficient and much healthier. Nowadays, Jiang Ming is no longer in a weak state, and his strength may not be much inferior to that of an adult who has trained twice. We still need to persist in cultivation. Although we have grown up, unknown troubles will not disappear. We need to be prepared for danger in times of peace. Jiang Ming muttered to himself, in a strange world, we need to always remain clear-headed. He scooped water from the water tank and took a cold bath. The rice porridge on the fire was almost there. Jiang Ming filled a bowl with pickled dry vegetables and began to eat and drink. Eating with a round belly, Jiang Ming lay diagonally in the bamboo chair, gazing into the distant mountains and forests. The faint mist had not yet dissipated, enveloping the peaks. The gentle sunlight reflected in the clear mist, like a layer of golden veil. Buy some more tea, brew tea at the foot of the mountain, and go up the mountain to pick herbs and fold flowers in your leisure time. It's really a dream paradise. Jiang Ming admired the beautiful scenery before him and immediately sighed, unfortunately, we will eventually have to bow down for the necessities of life. If Jiang Ming wants to practice martial arts, he must find a way to earn money as his predecessor did not leave any wealth. Whether learning martial arts from a master or purchasing martial arts pills, it requires a large amount of silver. Martial arts is not a game for the poor. Jiang Ming quickly got up and took out a basket of fresh medicinal herbs that he had picked in the past few days from the house, laying them on the ground to dry. There are also some difficult to sun-dry rhizome medicinal herbs, and Jiang Ming needs to start a charcoal fire to carefully dry them on the Kong. Some herbs left by their predecessors need to be further processed, poured into a pot and stir-fried over low heat to avoid mold. By the time he finally finished his work, it was already sunset. Jiang Ming chewed on the toothless dry cake and pondered as he struggled. I can go to the pharmacy tomorrow morning. There are many medicinal herbs left by our predecessors, and with the newly collected ones, we should be able to sell them for some money. After drinking a large bowl of cold water, Shun's choked throat cleared and he began to pick out medicinal herbs that could be sold. He then sorted and tied them with straw ropes, carefully placing them in the medicine basket. The next day, just as it was dawn, Jiang Ming opened his eyes and practiced his martial arts a little twice. He then pulled out the hidden medicine basket from the bedside, covered it with a polished animal skin, and carried it out of the door. The pharmaceutical market is located on an empty land at the other end of Pinyin town, surrounded by simple bamboo fences. Even in the early morning, many people have gathered. Jiang Ming walked in, found an open space to spread out the animal skins, placed the medicinal herbs one by one, and squatted on the ground to start setting up a stall. However, before the guests arrived, a middle-aged man with a burly figure and a fierce knife mark on his face walked over with a few thugs and said, "Oh, Amin, you've produced so much goods today. Can you save money to marry a wife?" Jiang Ming looked up and immediately greeted the other party's 8th-generation ancestors in his heart, but his face still showed a look of awe. "Good morning, Mr. Scar." Speaking, he took out 5 copper coins from his pocket and put them into the other person's hand. Scar Lord is the young leader of the old snake gang in Fucheng, and this medicine market was led by the old snake gang. In Pinyin town, every herb collector must come to the medicine market to sell medicine. Everyone selling medicine in the market must pay a venue fee. This is the rule. Someone once secretly ran to the city to sell medicine and was knocked off both legs. These herb pickers are almost impossible to turn over. Jiang Ming sighed in his heart, as the officials in the mansion were fat and shrewd all over. With such a big business in medicinal herbs, how could they let these mud-legged herb pickers make a fortune? Behind the old snake gang, various families and officials are indispensable. Mr. Scar, on the other hand, seemed to smile rather than smile. He used his toes to scratch and scratch on the medicinal herbs, and as he watched, he was about to step on and break a few of them. With so many goods this time, the venue fee is a bit. Scar Lord is wise. Jiang Ming quickly smiled and handed over 3 copper coins. Fortunately, I didn't bring back the fire cloud grass. Otherwise, not to mention making money, I'm afraid I'll have bad luck. Jiang Ming thought to himself, smiling as he watched his scarred face leave after seeing off the Scar Lord. It was not until dawn that a group of people in groups of 3 or 2 entered the pharmaceutical market to make purchases. At first glance, Jiang Ming saw that most of the people who came to buy medicine were neatly dressed, with delicate skin and flesh. They were from the city, and many even brought their attendants. This is the business of medicinal herbs, which ordinary people cannot do, and the herb pickers are only the bottom of the medicinal herb chain, and can only be exploited layer by the pharmacists and gangs. Jiang Ming watched as the old men in the city walked around, picking and choosing. Finally, an old man wearing a gray robe walked up to him. "Ha! How do you sell pork belly?" Jiang Ming quickly straightened up and said, "You look kind-hearted. If you want it all, I'll give you 20.5 copper coins. It's not easy to find pork porridge now, and this price is also considered cheap. Do you think so? Picking polyporous requires rich experience and is difficult to find, but finding the right place can dig tens to hundreds of pounds. Its predecessor was lucky enough to come across a place where polyporous grew, which can be considered a treasure trove for food." Jiang Ming, in order to ship quickly, also kept the price relatively low. The old man raised his eyebrows and said, "The kid can talk, okay, let's all pretend." He gave a glance behind him and immediately had an attendant come forward to pay for the medicine. Before the old man left, he left another sentence. "Black tea medicine, water golden vine, double the price, and fire cloud grass, find a reward." Jiang Ming didn't ask much, just nodded. This is also one of the rules. Old men who come to purchase sometimes ask the herb picker to name and purchase some urgently needed medicinal herbs, which is considered a bounty task. The remuneration for this task is usually relatively high, but the medicinal herbs are also difficult to find. Especially Huiyun grass. Jiang Ming's heart twitched slightly. This fire cloud grass used to be even rarer than 1,000-year-old ginseng. This year, there have suddenly been more people. Although it is still difficult to find, I have heard that 2 or 3 people have found it. This isn't even the one I ate. Jiang Ming's eyes flickered. The families and gangs in the city are also increasing their bounty prices, especially the Wang family. I heard that the current bounty price is already 60 taels. If Jiang Ming had 60 taels of silver, it would be enough for him to go to the city and find a good martial arts school to study for several years. Unfortunately, this road is impassable. Jiang Ming thought of the mountain guards, Scar Lord, and those old men who bought medicine without smiling, and his heart was as calm as water. This windfall is not something he can make now. "Little brat, do you still have pig ling?" A rough shout made Jiang Ming come to his senses. He looked up and saw that he was a regular customer. He quickly apologized and said, "I'm really sorry, it's all sold out." A hint of impatience flashed in the person's eyes, and they shook their sleeves and left. Jiang Ming shook his head speechlessly. Except for Zhuling, none of his other medicinal herbs are rare, and it won't be easy to sell in the future. Sure enough, until it was close to noon, the old men who were buying medicine walked around in disarray, and Jiang Ming's medicinal herbs were still half left, with no one interested. In the morning, a total of 60 copper coins were sold, except for the exploitation by petty officials and Scar Lord in the past few days. There were only 50 copper coins. This still includes the inventory of the predecessor. Life is not easy. Jiang Ming sighed and put the remaining medicinal herbs in the medicine basket. He also bought some rice and noodles in the town before returning home. Perhaps it's time to give that prescription a try, Jiang Ming thought to himself as he hung his head on his way home. Thank you to the book friend for giving a reward for Rebirth 8888888888. The boss is generous, thank you for your support. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Getting Rich. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Getting rich. Late at night, everything was quiet, and the candlelight in the thatched cottage was dim. Jiang Ming spread the gray and white animal skin he had obtained from Huang Laogui on the table and looked at it carefully. 2 mountain longan, 2 snake flower grass roots, 1 pig heart, 3 cicada molts, leeches, 9 fragrant insects. Take 3 pounds of clean water and boil it. Drop 1 or 2 drops of blood into the pot every day. For 3 consecutive days. At noon when the sun is blazing, take the red liquid and seal it for later use. Jiang Ming's mouth twitched, no wonder Huang Laogui has a pale and emaciated face all day long. He draws 1 or 2 blood every day for 3 consecutive days, and if he doesn't get it right, he has to start over. Who can withstand this normal person? However, this prescription is simply tailored for me. Jiang Ming's eyes flickered, it seemed that his path to wealth was on this prescription. There are a few medicinal herbs that are not common in the mountains, so we can only go to the medicine market to try our luck. In the following days, Jiang Ming focused all his thoughts on this prescription, except for picking herbs and practicing martial arts. Every time he goes to the pharmacy to set up a stall, he puts up a wooden sign and writes down the medicinal herbs he needs with charcoal ash. To avoid attracting attention, he only writes about 1 type of medicinal herb at a time more than a month later. Deep in the mist of Yunmeng Mountain, an agile figure moved between the cliffs of pine and cypress, picking a dark plant that grew on the cliff. With a gentle leap, it effortlessly climbed up the cliff and landed steadily. A month ago, I really couldn't pick this black tea medicine. Jiang Ming carefully placed it in the medicine basket, his face full of joy. Nowadays, Jiang Ming seems to have undergone a complete transformation. Under his loose clothes, his muscles are twisted and his lines are smooth, full of explosive power. His eyes are clear and bright, and he is full of energy. The road he used to dare not walk and the medicine he dared not pick, now he is walking on the ground and easily getting it. Nowadays, 3 or 4 ordinary adults combined are not my opponents, are they? Jiang Ming muttered to himself. For over a month, he has been practicing martial arts every day, using various mountain herbs and unknown poisonous bacteria. He eats high sai like he doesn't need money every day. It seems that among those poisonous bacteria, there is an unknown medicinal power that has continuously increased Jiang Ming's strength, which is now several times that of ordinary people. If these mushrooms are non-toxic, I'm afraid they won't be my turn to eat. Jiang Ming sighed, who could have thought that these highly toxic substances contain unimaginable medicinal effects. But it seems like the end has come. Starting from the first 2 days, his strength grew slower and made little progress. The ordinary boxing techniques for strengthening my body and keeping fit are no longer sufficient for me. I must find a way to practice martial arts. During this period, Jiang Ming has gained a deeper understanding of the world. There is a legend about immortals, and martial arts exist in the world. The so-called martial arts are not just simple martial arts, but a method of cultivation that transcends the mundane. Not only does it require external cultivation techniques, but also corresponding internal breathing techniques to embark on the path of martial arts. The nameless fist technique practiced by Jiang Ming can at best be considered a kind of low-level external cultivation method. If it weren't for his continuous improvement, ordinary people would never have been able to achieve fame after practicing it for a lifetime. The top priority is to solve the financial problem. Jiang Ming has already explored a path to learn martial arts, but if he really wants to learn, it can't be solved with just a few dozen copper coins. With this in mind, Jiang Ming stood up and rushed in another direction. In the familiar cave, a jar of pungent medicinal liquid lay on the ground, with a layer of light red liquid crystal clear on the surface, which was very strange. This is exactly where Jiang Ming stayed for the first night when he came to this world. He stared at the medicine in front of him, looking forward. I hope it can be successful this time. Thinking of the past month or so, Jiang Ming couldn't help but feel a headache over the trouble caused by this prescription. The medicinal herbs have already been collected, but the prescription on the animal skin is extremely simple, and many details are unclear, such as how long it needs to be boiled, whether leeches need to be alive or dried in the sun. It caused Jiang Ming to fail several times before he finally found some clues. Later on, he simply brought medicinal herbs and dry grains into the mountain, collecting and refining herbs at the same time. It wasn't until this time that the appearance of the medicinal liquid seemed to finally be like that. Approaching noon, Jiang Ming moved the medicine jar out of the cave and placed it facing the scorching sun. Finally, at the fiercest moment of the blazing sun, the layer of pale red liquid in the medicine jar slowly turned into a crimson color, like a glass blood diamond, emitting a fragrance of grass and trees. Like glass in appearance, with a fragrant aroma. Finally, it has become. Jiang Ming's eyes were excited, and he quickly took out a medicine bottle, poured this layer of red liquid into it, and sealed the bottle mouth. Next, it's time to find a suitable animal to test whether this medicinal effect is real or fake. In the evening, Jiang Ming returned to the cave carrying a gray rabbit. After drinking it, we become friends. Jiang Ming released a hand and opened the medicine bottle, showing a wolf-like grandmother's smile. Gugu. As soon as the bottle was opened, the rabbit in his hand let out an anxious cry, limbs flapping and his head poking towards the bottle, as if the liquid in the bottle had a deadly attraction to it. This thing really has some tricks. Jiang Ming showed a strange expression, poured the red liquid from the medicine bottle into a broken bowl, and then threw the rabbit to the ground. Ha, ha, ha! The rabbit rushed forward and licked the broken bowl fiercely. In no time, it finished drinking all the red liquid and stayed in place, motionless. Jiang Ming waited patiently, and in no time, a quarter of an hour passed. Half an hour has passed. Just as Jiang Ming was speculating whether the rabbit had hung up, it suddenly became aroused and looked up at Jiang Ming. In its ruby-like eyes, there was a glimmer of agility. Then, turn your head and run. Jiang Ming was quick-witted and quickly pulled it up. The medicinal strength should not be enough. He guessed to himself, not surprised. It seems that wild animals are indeed difficult to tame. He tied the rabbit to the cave with a rope and began a new round of refining medicine. 3 days later the gray rabbit finished another bottle of medicine and its gaze became more agile. Jiang Ming tried to let it go, but it didn't want to escape anymore, but it was also difficult to drive it. It sniffed and gnawed in the cave, which was very annoying. Do it again. 3 days later. The gray rabbit drank the third bottle of medicine, and Jiang Ming could clearly feel that there was a slight connection between him and the gray rabbit. This time it should be okay. Jiang Ming touched his chin and pulled out a black tea herb from the medicine basket. He placed it in front of Gray Rabbit and tentatively asked, I need this. Can you help me find it? Gugu. The gray rabbit sniffed a few times before turning its head and running towards the outside of the cave. Jiang Ming showed a hint of joy and quickly followed approaching evening, in the depths of an inconspicuous mountain stream. Jiang Ming stood on a blue stone, staring at a depression in front of him that was mostly covered by bushes, feeling somewhat stunned. In the depression, more than a dozen dark black tea herbs grew freely, with the smallest one being one size larger than the one picked by Jiang Ming. This is too outrageous. Jiang Ming murmured, his expression expressionless as he jumped down from the depression, like harvesting crops, carrying black tea herbs into his bag. On the bluestone, a gray rabbit bounced back and forth, looking a bit proud. 2 days later Jiang Ming looked into the cave, covered in various medicinal herbs, completely silent. Black tea medicine, water golden vine, pig ling are all valuable medicinal herbs, and together they may sell for more than 2 taels of silver. It's not bad that I've been bleeding for 9 days in a row. Jiang Ming sighed with emotion, Grey Lord, in the future, if I take a bite, I won't be able to starve you. The performance of Grey Rabbit in the past few days has made Jiang Ming willingly shout, Yi. The cat and dog that Huang Lao Gui keeps cannot have such a good effect. This is the difference between mountain animals and domestic pets. Gugu in a corner of the cave, a grey rabbit lay on the ground, lying on all fours, casually biting the carrots that Jiang Ming had bought from the town. Please remember to bookmark and recommend tickets after reading. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Road of Martial Arts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The Road of Martial Arts. In the cave, various medicinal herbs piled up in piles, but Jiang Ming fell into contemplation. With Grey Lord as his assistant, he can easily search for medicinal herbs in the mountains in the future. But how to turn these medicinal herbs into silver coins and put them in the bag is the real challenge. Carrying them all down the mountain to sell is a way of seeking death. I can only eat all the expensive tonics. I'll take the rest out of the mountain and sell them in batches. Those old herb pickers all have secret treasure troves. I've been wandering in the mountains for so many years, and it's normal for me to be lucky enough to find some good places. Perhaps it will still attract covetousness, but it's just a matter of paying a few more copper coins. Jiang Ming doesn't care and slowly saves money. He has plenty of time. The next morning, Jiang Ming returned to Pinyin town. In the medicine basket behind me, most of them are ordinary medicinal herbs, as well as 6 black tea herbs and some pork umbrellas. Oh, good luck. The clerk at the town entrance's eyes turned red. Jiang Ming quickly handed over 7 or 8 copper coins, and the other party only left step by step. Pharmaceutical market. With a touch of joy, Scar Master said lightly and took away 20 copper coins from Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming's face showed a look of heartache, but he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. It seems that as long as it weren't for rare medicinal herbs like huiyin grass, these officials wouldn't have done any robbery, they just exploited more. During this period, the market for black tea medicine has been on the rise. One plant can sell for at least 20 copper coins, adding up to over 100 copper coins, which is enough to recoup the cost, he calculated in his heart. Sure enough, several dark black tea herbs were extremely eye-catching. Soon, a young man wearing a gorgeous purple brocade robe walked over with a folding fan. Jiang Ming was surprised in his heart that most of the people who came to the pharmaceutical market to purchase were familiar faces. This was the first time he had seen such a promiscuous guy. However, before Jiang Ming could speak, the man in the purple robe said coldly, I'll take all the black tea medicine for 100 copper coins. Jiang Ming's body paused and slowly looked up at the other person. He calmly smiled and said, Young master, you have a good eye. The quality of my black tea medicine is all top-notch. The man in the brocade robe impatiently waved his hand and said, Dare to pass off inferior products. I'll chop your hand. He threw down a string of copper coins and turned around to leave. A servant approached and took away all the black tea herbs, then jokingly glanced at Jiang Ming and grabbed a handful of pork umbrellas before leaving. Jiang Ming's smile remained unchanged, while his heart firmly remembered the appearance of these two people. After selling almost all the medicinal herbs, he went to a small tavern. Ah Ming, I heard you had great luck this time. Old Jiang smiled behind the counter. Jiang Ming let out a long sigh and said, 50 copper coins were lost on the road. Do you think it's lucky or unlucky? Old Jiang hesitated for a moment and said, Is this too much now? When is it too much? Run your tongue, smoked tofu. Double. Jiang Ming said with a bitter smile. After serving wine and vegetables, Jiang Ming greeted several familiar herb pickers and sat at a table where there was already one person. Chiao, Mr. Zhou, I'll treat you to this meal. He pushed a serving of wine and vegetables over. Ah Ming, you treat me like an old man every day, which makes me a bit flustered. Across from him was a thin, white-haired old man, as if the wind could blow him down. However, To put it bluntly, the old man's movements were not slow at all. His trembling hands accurately picked up the soft and tender tofu, feeding it into his mouth one by one, and in no time, he ate it all. Gudong gudong, he swallowed the whole bowl of wine in one gulp and said earnestly, "Ah Ming, my martial arts techniques are incomplete and too harmful to your body. It's harmful for you to learn them." Jiang Ming's gaze remained calm and he said, "Mr. Zhou, I'm still young and I always have to put in a fight." Lao Zhou too is the only person in the town who has practiced martial arts. There were more than 10 people who wanted to learn martial arts from him back then, but in the end, he either suffered from injuries and illnesses while practicing, or was given the resources needed to practice martial arts. He spent all his money, and none of them became famous over the years. Almost no one has mentioned learning martial arts anymore. Old Zhou looked at the persistent Jiang Ming with a bitter smile and said, "Well, when you're ready, come find me. Maybe you'll give up after a few days." "Thank you very much, Mr. Zhou," Jiang Minglian hurriedly said. Immediately, the atmosphere became harmonious, and the two of them participated in the chatter of the surrounding herb pickers. This is also the main reason why Jiang Ming often comes here, being able to receive new information and quickly understand and familiarize himself with the world. By the way, who knows? What's the origin of the new one in the pharmacy? Jiang Ming suddenly asked. "That one wearing purple clothes." Someone immediately answered in a low voice, "I'll tell you, don't mess with that guy. I heard he's a new first-class martial arts family in the city, from the Shi family. A first-class warrior family." The surroundings were gasping for breath. Once one has achieved success in the cultivation of martial arts, one can be called a warrior. And martial artists can be divided into first class, second-rate, third-rate, and non-mainstream. Only non-mainstream martial artists can achieve 1/10 when facing ordinary adult men. It is not an exaggeration to say that a first-class warrior is an enemy of 100 people. Even if placed in the army, they are still a leading general on one side. In the city of Dian Prefecture, a first-class warrior is enough to establish a top-notch force. In the past, the power of first-class warriors in Dian Mansion City did not exceed the first-hand index, but now there is another addition. I heard that this family is in high demand, and there are a few medicine collectors here who are disobedient and have all disappeared. Another person suppressed their throat and said, wiping their neck with their hands. "I haven't seen Zhang Jizi, Lu Xiapengzi, Huang Laogui, Duan Datu in a long time. The last time at the pharmacy, the purple-clothed bastard couldn't force a robbery and even killed a herb picker on the spot." The atmosphere suddenly became a bit low, and everyone couldn't help but feel angry, but there was nowhere to vent. Jiang Ming lowered his head and silently took a sip of wine. "I didn't expect someone to take responsibility for Huang Laogui's black pot. He remembered the dozens of copper coins he had lost, so let's just pay for the black pot. Oh, the world is difficult." Jiang Ming sighed, feeling a bit uncomfortable. Although the Shi family took the blame for him, among the disappeared names, there were 2 people who had a good relationship with Jiang Ming, both of whom were honest and kind-hearted people. "Shi family," he murmured softly, his obsession with learning martial arts even stronger. Immediately, in order to eliminate the sense of oppression, a young furry boy younger than Jiang Ming took the lead in changing the topic. "By the way, do you know that LV Laosan handed over Huiyin grass to the Wang family, received 70 taels of silver, and went to find Miss Schwer to enjoy the scenery?" "Shit, really fake." A group of men immediately blushed with jealousy. "This can still be fake. When will LV Laosan come to drink? You ask him." "I have also heard that the Wang family's high bid is because Miss Wang has a hidden illness that needs to be treated with Huiyin grass. I heard it has been cured now. In order to fulfill her wish, Miss Wang will personally come to the river at the foot of the mountain in a few days to release the spirit fish." "What? Is the fish big?" The little boy just now exclaimed in surprise, regretting his delayed news. Everyone's faces were full of questions. Is this the key point? Oh, I'm leaving now. Hurry up and make a harpoon. Ha ha ha. A burst of laughter spread from the tavern. Jiang Ming silently finished his drink and left, injecting fragrance into his heart for that LV Laosan. Remember to click on the recommended ticket after everyone finishes reading it. If there is no feedback, the author always feels like they are single-player winky face. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Burial of Friends. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Burial of Friends. As time passed, the disappearance of several herb pickers was like a tiny stone falling into a lake, causing some ripples, but soon calmed down and no one mentioned it again. In the mountains and forests, as always, there is tranquility. Few. The sound of breaking through the air suddenly sounded, and a sharp arrow shot out, accurately hitting a big tree. It's not difficult. More than 10 zhang away, Jiang Ming held a hunting bow and his gaze remained calm. Since we reached an agreement on learning martial arts with old Zhou that day, he has not been secretive. When we drink together, we often teach him some basic preparations that need to be done before formally learning martial arts. Learning martial arts is not just a passing skill. If one's foundation is not up to par, it is possible to become disabled while practicing. Firstly, it is physical fitness. Jiang Ming's physique is far beyond that of an ordinary person, so naturally there is no problem. Moreover, what is more important is the internal practice breathing method. If the external cultivation method is an arrow that unleashes power, the internal cultivation breathing method is a bow that controls power. If the breathing method is not practiced properly, not only will it be difficult to advance every step of the martial arts path, but it is also very easy to harm the body. To learn internal breathing techniques, the first step is to control one's own breathing method. Archery is a skill that requires extremely high self-breathing control. In order to practice controlling his own breathing, Jiang Ming spent 30 copper coins and bought a hunting bow. He has been practicing archery in the mountains for the past few days and has entered the country quite quickly. Now, within 10 zhang, he is able to accurately shoot a large tree that is 1 person thick, which is still far behind those experienced hunters, but far beyond the average person. Perhaps it's because I live forever, and when practicing arrows, I don't have the impatience to succeed. With a calm and composed mind, I actually make rapid progress. Jiang Ming guessed in his heart. The method of internal cultivation is indeed closely related to one's state of mind. Martial arts cultivation is a painstaking process, and the more eager one is to achieve success, the easier it is to fail. As evening approached, Jiang Ming shook his sore shoulders, picked up his hunting bow, and returned to the cave where he lived. In the cave, most of the medicinal herbs were already missing, and he transported them down the mountain in batches. Apart from selling a portion of them himself, he also secretly distributed some profits to Lao Zhou too. After all, if you want to learn martial arts from old Zhou, you always have to give him some benefits. The next morning, dark clouds shrouded and light rain pattered. Jiang Ming finished practicing his boxing as usual and set up a small stove at the entrance of the cave. The pottery pot was steaming hot on the stove, and the tea soup inside was bubbling. He sat on the ground casually, poured himself a bowl of coarse tea, eating dry cakes while slowly sipping. Life is long, but one should also learn to enjoy it. Gugu, a plump gray rabbit, jumped out of nowhere and circled around Jiang Ming. "Gray Lord, have you found the medicinal herbs again?" Jiang Ming showed a happy expression and quickly said, "What kind is it?" Gray Rabbit quickly rushed into the cave, pulled out a yellow rhizome the size of a thumb cap from a pile of different medicinal herbs, and lifted it back to Jiang Ming with 2 front paws. "Really? Take me there." Jiang Ming's eyes lit up and he stood up quickly. In order to train Grey Master to find medicine, Jiang Ming spared no expense in spending hundreds of copper coins and bought a small amount of various precious medicinal herbs back. This yellow rhizome belongs to a top-notch medicinal herb. If you can really find it, you will definitely make a fortune. Soon, one person and one rabbit set off towards the depths of the mountains and forests. Half an hour later, in a dense forest where there is no sunlight for years, Jiang Ming held a golden rhizome resembling a combination of worms and ginseng, with a joyful expression on his face. Jin Chong Shen, one plant can sell for 500 copper coins. Moreover, as long as one of these golden ginseng plants is found, there must be more nearby. Grey Lord is arrogant. If I have one bite to eat in the future, I will definitely not starve you. Goo goo goo. Grey Lord jumped to invite credit, and then a reckless man rushed towards the deeper part of the dense forest. Hey, wait a moment. Before Jiang Ming could finish speaking, a sudden roar came from the dense forest. Roar. Immediately after, there was a thumping sound of chickens flying and dogs jumping. Damn it. When Jiang Ming arrived at the scene of the crime, he only saw a mountain cat with mixed fur, tearing at Grey Lord's neck. Jiang Ming immediately rushed forward with a firewood knife and stabbed the murderer of Grey Lord to death, but unfortunately only saved half of Grey Lord's body. Grey Lord, you're impulsive. Jiang Ming sighed and dug a pit to bury him. Jiang Ming was already prepared for the sacrifice of Grey Lord. After all, the mountains and forests were treacherous and unpredictable. But he didn't expect this day to come so soon. Grey Lord, without you, I don't want to pick herbs anymore. Jiang Ming sighed and decided to take a few days off to go home as a memorial. Of course, there is another reason why Jiang Ming needs to purchase medicinal materials for refining the royal beast red liquid again. After enjoying the feeling of getting something for nothing, he can't go back anymore. As always, the few disappeared herb pickers in Pinyin town seemed insignificant, and even the topics in the tavern no longer mentioned them. However, Jiang Ming noticed that there seemed to be some vague glances in the town sweeping over him. In the tavern, Jiang Ming and Lao Zhou gathered at the same table. This time, they ordered a more expensive old ginseng wine, and there were also 2 more dishes to serve. With the increasing amount of money in his pocket, Jiang Ming's living standards have also improved significantly, even replacing a batch of equipment such as firewood knives, medicine sickles, etc. that entered the mountain. Ah Ming, do you remember that LV Laosan? Old Zhou chewed on peanuts and squinted as he asked. Jiang Ming calmly said, what's going on? Are you dead? Old Zhou was taken aback for a moment and looked up at Jiang Ming, as if he had met this young herb collector for the first time. He gave a bitter smile and shook his head, saying, I'm not dead, but my tongue was pulled out and all the silver was thrown away. Now I'm going crazy every day. You've sold a lot of medicine these days, and many people have seen it. Old Zhou nodded at a few dishes on the table and said meaningfully. Jiang Ming smiled nonchalantly and said, it's not selling much. Those people shouldn't break the rules for this little money. Old Zhou frowned slightly and said, of course, Old Scar and those officials are too lazy to manage, but there are still many idle thugs in town. Mr. Zhou. Jiang Ming gulped down the wine from his bowl and let out a long sigh. There is not only one way to live, I have my own way. Wait for me to save enough money and learn martial arts from you. Old Zhou was stunned, then let out a sigh and didn't say anything more. He thought this young man was young and reckless, maybe he had to suffer some losses before he could be sharpened. Jiang Ming also did not speak much, arguing that these were useless, only the final result could be convincing. Drinking in the morning, strolling around in the afternoon, and buying some tea, rice, and noodles, Jiang Ming strolled home. This life full of worldly smoke and fire was also peaceful and interesting. So anxious. Jiang Ming's footsteps suddenly slowed down. This is a narrow dirt road in the field, usually almost deserted, but today there are 2 young people hanging around, blocking the way. He turned his head to look, and behind him were also a few ragged and shabby little brats with evasive eyes, but gradually pushing forward. Amin, I heard that good luck is coming these days. Leading the way was a young man with dark skin and thick limbs, swaying a firewood knife in his hand and slowly walking towards Jiang Ming. Brothers, I'm a bit tight lately. I came to borrow some silver money from you to spend some money. Requesting recommended tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. I Want to Be Evil. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. I want to be evil. On the narrow muddy road, Jiang Ming stood casually in place, not panicking at all, and said with a faint smile. Guohaizi, it's just a little silver, it's all external possessions. I can give it to you, there's no need to see blood. As he spoke, he took out a string of copper coins from his arms and shook them in front of several people. Guohaizi's eyes lit up, and the thug next to him laughed disdainfully. I told you earlier that Jiang Ming is a coward. Hold him down and search for all the money. Behind Jiang Ming, several poor boys who were originally timid rushed towards Jiang Ming as soon as they saw the copper coins and saw Jiang Ming so cowardly again. They were filled with evil and their eyes lit up with green light. A seemingly inconspicuous skinny boy took out a wooden stick from his sleeve and threw it at Jiang Ming's head. However, in my imagination, the situation of Jiang Ming's head breaking and bleeding did not occur. Jiang Ming tilted his body and lightly extended his left hand, then grabbed the slender young man's wrist from behind, making him unable to move at all. Ah! Let go! The young man screamed in agony, his whole face twisted uncontrollably. He felt as if he had been captured by a fierce tiger, his bones about to be crushed, and he tried his best but couldn't break free. The wooden stick fell from his hand, and Jiang Ming grabbed it with his right hand. Then he swung his arm and hit the skinny boy's calf cleanly. Click! With only a crisp sound, the skinny boy's calves twisted instantly, and his screams were as loud as killing a pig. Saying it's not worth seeing blood, why bother? 10 copper coins, remember it, Jiang Ming said calmly, casually throwing them away. The skinny boy suddenly flew out several meters and crashed into the nearby mud field, groaning sadly. The other few poor boys, when the boy let out his first scream, were frightened and retreated in succession. At this moment, they were all cold and frightened. They usually just do some sneaky things. When have they seen such a ruthless guy who would break his leg at a word of disagreement? In their impression, this is something that only people at the level of Scar Lord and Official Lord are qualified to do. Guohaizi was even more shocked and angry, pointing fiercely at Jiang Ming and sternly saying, "Do you know what relationship I have with Master Scar? Do you dare to harm people in Master Scar's territory, and are you not afraid of being chopped off by Master Scar? You, 20 copper coins." Jiang Ming's response was to point a wooden stick at Guohaizi's head. "You horse, seek death." Guohaizi was completely angry and called on the thugs next to him to come up together. "Chop him." The two of them rushed forward with their firewood knives and stabbed at Jiang Ming. However, in Jiang Ming's eyes, their actions were no different from wild chickens pecking randomly. Over the past month, Jiang Ming's persistent practice of boxing has surpassed the limits of ordinary people in terms of strength, speed, and even reaction ability. Even though he practiced ordinary body strengthening techniques, he was more than enough to deal with a few rural thugs. In an instant, the shadow of the stick flew like rain, hitting Guohaizi and his companions with a crackling sound. Ah! Ah! 2 screams, accompanied by a crisp and pleasant sound of fractures, rang out in this field. "You just wanted to hold me down, right? Brave, 25 copper coins." Jiang Ming nodded at that thug and knocked him on the head a few times, causing him to have a swollen face and tears streaming down his face. "You guys come over too," Jiang Ming called out. Another crackling sound, with several more panda heads screaming incessantly in the mud field. You're looking for death, Scar Lord won't spare you." Guohaizi continued to howl bitterly, "You're definitely dead." "I won't die, what does it have to do with you?" Jiang Ming man said casually, "Aren't you here to borrow money? Just take your money." What does it mean?" Guohaizi's mind didn't turn a bit. Jiang Ming directly untied the copper coin rope, threw him 20, and then threw them to the thug and the skinny boy according to the number just mentioned. The rest is divided among the others. Jiang Ming casually threw the remaining copper coins onto the ground, facing a bunch of confused panda heads and showing a gentle smile. Put the money away and remember what I'm going to say next. A few panda heads became even more confused. Firstly, I didn't give you any money, but instead blocked you at your doorstep, beat you up hard, and took all your silver money. Secondly, tomorrow morning you will go to town and cry about what happened today. That's all for sure. Thirdly, you can tell Scar Lord truthfully, but remember, as long as Scar Lord can't kill me, I'll kill you. Of course, if you tell Mr. Scar, not only will you be beaten, but you may also lose the silver you received. It's not worth the loss. Jiang Ming spoke slowly and then turned around to leave, leaving only the increasingly bewildered panda head on the ground, whispering together the next morning. A strange sight has appeared in Pinyin Town. One by one, guys with blue noses and swollen faces were crying and crying everywhere in the town, telling the story of being beaten and even taking money. That's all I have left for dinner, he's taking my life. It's too vicious. He rushed straight into my room and broke my leg with a stick. I just want to live my life to the fullest. How could I have met such a villain? At the entrance of the small tavern, Guahaizi sat with a white cloth wrapped around his arm, crying bitterly and looking lifeless. That Jiang Ming is so vicious. The tavern was full of discussions, and everyone had a ghostly expression. What happened to him? Jiang Ming, that young man who has met everyone with kindness, how dare he do such a cruel thing? Lao Zhoutu and Lao Jiangtu behind the counter looked at each other in confusion. Together, they had lived for over 100 years and had never seen such a strange thing before. Suddenly, Guahaizi outside the door seemed to have his throat pinched, and suddenly there was no sound. The rustling footsteps sounded, and a young figure walked into the tavern. He calmly greeted everyone and then ordered food and drinks. He sat across from old Zhou's head and started eating and drinking as if no one was around. The tavern suddenly fell silent, with eyes quietly sweeping over Jiang Ming. Is this your way? Old Zhou lowered his voice and said with a trembling voice, you don't want to live anymore. That Guahaizi is just following old Scar. Jiang Ming looked up at him and sighed lightly, Mr. Zhou, you're old and can't see through how this world works anymore. Sometimes, if you want to live a peaceful life, you don't just have to back down and compromise. The more you tolerate it, the more people will want to ride on your head and become donkey attendants until you completely crush the donkey to death. I want to learn martial arts, make money, and always attract more and more attention. If I don't want to be oppressed by villains, then I have to become villains too. Old Zhou hesitated and said, will Mr. Kuskar spare you? He not only spared me. Jiang Ming picked up a piece of smoked tofu covered in chili peppers, enjoying the spicy and mellow aroma, and chuckled lightly. He would also smile at me, try to win me over and take me as his brother. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Cows, Sheep, and Tigers and Wolves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Cows, Sheep, and Tigers and Wolves. Old Zhou listened to Jiang Ming's gibberish and was somewhat stunned. He couldn't figure out whether he really had confidence or if his brain was burned out. Ah, young people nowadays are really different from me back then. After a long time, old Zhou finally smiled bitterly and shook his head. He immediately warned, I hope things will develop as you wish, but I advise you to be prepared and run away as soon as the situation gets bad. Jiang Ming nodded and continued to drink. Lao Zhoutu didn't say much anymore, but he didn't get up and leave. He was already pondering in his heart. If there were really a lot of trouble later, with his thin face, he should be able to save Jiang Ming's life. Outside the tavern, Guahaizi was still groaning, but there were more and more people inside. All eyes were focused on Jiang Ming, and whispers kept ringing. Jiang Ming is usually honest and straightforward, how could he do such a bad thing? Perhaps I've been bullied for a long time, come up with a way to vent my anger. Although I'm angry, I'm going to suffer. At least one hand will be cut off by Mr. Scar. I think there should be at least 2 hands. One person swore confidently, what kind of person is Scar Lord? How could he tolerate such provocation? Isn't that right? This young man is really young and reckless. He has never seen Scar Lord's methods before. Amidst the buzzing discussion, there was surprisingly a large portion of people waiting to watch the play. Even many people who have been bullied by Scar Lord are now blushing, drinking and speculating that Jiang Ming will be broken by a few bones, which is so exciting that it is difficult to understand. Jiang Ming closed his ears and smiled silently, understanding their thoughts. Some people are often oppressed and unable to lift their heads. When they suddenly see someone who dares to resist and oppress them, their first thought is not to cheer for the rebels, but to think, why should he resist? Isn't that making me feel weak? I'm just a lowly commoner like me. How dare I be so crazy? I must be beaten and obediently bow my head, so that I can balance my mind and feel smooth. If cattle and sheep are kept in captivity for a long time, they will lose their ability to resist. Jiang Ming shook his head and stopped thinking about these things quickly. Scattered footsteps came from outside. A scarred face appeared in the tavern, half bright and half dark against the light, like a fierce wild wolf, making people unable to help but feel awe. The tavern fell into silence. Mr. Scar's gaze coldly scanned around and finally locked onto Jiang Ming. He quickly walked closer, pulled a chair, and sat down with a golden sword. Behind him was a scene of cheers, with 7 or 8 attendants surrounding the table. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Ah Ming, you're really a good tool. Scar Master said in a rough voice, casually taking a bowl of wine and drinking it all in one gulp. It's about to start. The onlookers were excited and said, what Jiang Ming is going to do for him has paid the price. Jiang Ming's gaze remained calm and he smiled lightly. Compared to Mr. Scar, it's still far behind. Mr. Scar seemed to be laughing in anger. He leaned back and patted the table, saying, tell me, what's going on? You need to give me an explanation today. Many onlookers immediately stretched their necks, waiting for Scar Lord to make a fuss. However, old Zhou Tu and some other old fogies looked puzzled, which was different from old Scar's usual style. If someone dares to offer a few less copper coins, old Scar would dare to cut off one of his fingers and not even say a word of nonsense. And when Jiang Ming caused such a big incident, how could old Scar be less irritable and give Jiang Ming a chance to explain? As Jiang Ming was about to speak, old Zhou quickly coughed lightly and said, Jiang Ming, it's easy to explain. If you have any difficulties, please tell Scar Lord. His implicit intention was to make Jiang Ming clear the responsibility and shift it onto Guohaizi and others. After all, everyone still knows what Guohaizi and others are. Jiang Ming shook his head in his heart. I spent dozens of copper coins, not to be a good person. And now being a good person is like cows and sheep pretending to be pitiful in front of tigers and wolves. Setting up their own plate, it's not a big deal. He said casually without thinking, I've been spending too much money lately and I'm a bit tight. I just heard that Guohaizi and a few others often have unclean hands and feet, so I went to their house to teach them a lesson and borrow some silver money to spend money. It's not just about breaking a few bones, it's not about not being able to grow back, it's not a big deal. Jiang Ming's expression was casual and indifferent, and his tone of breaking a person's bones was as effortless as stepping on a few ants. It seems that his previous low-key honesty was just a facade, but today is his true identity. At the entrance of the tavern, Guohaizi leaned against the threshold, tears streaming down his 2 dark eyes. How could he steal all my lines? Why in the tavern, there was an uproar, and everyone looked at Jiang Ming in disbelief. They thought that Jiang Ming was an honest person who couldn't bear being bullied, so their anger erupted and they rose up to resist, seeking revenge from these thugs. No one could have imagined that Jiang Ming's honesty was all disguised, but in reality, he was a mischievous bully who did such a heinous act of robbing money and beating people. and he didn't take it seriously. Jiang Ming, he's hiding too deep. That's right, I was almost deceived by his honest appearance before. Everyone was discussing, but strangely enough, after Jiang Ming revealed his image as a bully, the previously gloating gaze on the scene quietly lowered and disappeared. Instead, there were expressions of fear and awe. Old Zhou's boss was stunned. He thought he knew Jiang Ming well and couldn't figure out why Jiang Ming had portrayed himself as a bully. However, upon hearing this, Scar Lord suddenly burst out laughing as he stared straight at Jiang Ming for a moment. Okay. I never saw before that you were still a character, I mean. Those useless people don't follow the rules. I've been wanting to clean up for a long time, but I didn't expect you to take action on my behalf. I really want to thank you for this. Jiang Ming remained silent, so naturally he wouldn't be foolish enough to take this statement seriously. Mr. Scar asked old Jiang Tu to bring 2 bowls of wine, stood up, raised a bowl, and loudly said, "There's no big grudge or resentment. If we do this bowl of wine, we can settle today's matter. How about that?" Jiang Ming just smiled and stood up with a drink. Just listen to Scar Lord. Bang, the wine bowls collided and the two drank in one gulp. Amin brothers, if you have anything in the future, just feel free to come to me, old Scar. Mr. Scar put down his bowl and said loudly. Immediately, his expression remained calm and he stared at Jiang Ming. This is Zhaoan. Jiang Ming knew the meaning of this sentence, but he didn't care. Old Scar regards this Pinyin town as his kingdom to operate, but Jiang Ming will leave sooner or later. He doesn't care whether he lowers his head or not. All he wants is to solve the problem once and for all. Since that's the case, thank you very much, Mr. Scar. Jiang Ming smiled and drank a bowl of wine alone. Old Scar suddenly burst out laughing, greeted him, and then led a group of followers to rush out and disappear outside the tavern. Everyone is dumbfounded. The tavern was silent for a long time before the buzzing murmurs of discussion began. Is that all? Over. No one can understand what's going on. From Scar Lord to walking, it only took a cup of tea time. Originally thought to be a thrilling and bloody scene, but in the end, it turned out to be a cup of wine to clear the grudges. Old Zhou stared for a long time, only then did he have a hint of half-understanding in his eyes. I seem to be really too old. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Jiangda Villain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Jiangda Villain. As noon approached, apart from Lao Jiangtu, there were only Jiang Ming and Lao Zhoutu left in the tavern. In the minds of the people in the town, even if Jiang Ming is not as good as Scar Lord, he is still afraid to stay here when he sees evil people who want to walk around. Old Jiang's gaze became somewhat resentful. This old Scar, drink me 2 bowls of wine for free. Jiang Ming continued to throw peanuts into his mouth, dissatisfied. Old Zhou was speechless and said, "You have become a big villain that everyone is shouting at. You are still picking up these 2 bowls of wine. Hey, you're only half right about that." Jiang Ming immediately corrected, "It's true that you've become a big villain. Everyone yells and fights." "That's not necessarily true." Old Zhou was speechless, then let out a long sigh and said, "I've lived my whole life, and today I've only broadened my horizons." "How can you be certain that Scar will spare you?" he still said with some confusion. Jiang Ming smiled and said calmly, "If I were an honest person who resists the bully, old Scar would definitely break my leg, because even the most noisy cows and sheep are just a plate of food in the eyes of tigers and wolves. If I don't listen, I will bite and eat them directly. But if I am a bully who does all kinds of evil, then I stand on the opposite side of cows and sheep. Cows and sheep will fear me, while tigers and wolves will treat me as their kind. Even if there is a conflict between tigers and wolves, it will never be caused by the provocation of cows and sheep. For Scar Lord, I am a young tiger and wolf who can form factions. If I can tame nature, it's best. Why bother fighting to death? As for those thugs like Guahaizi, in Old Scar's eyes, at best they are just foolish and unaware cattle and sheep. They use them when they are useful, and abandon them directly when they are useless. Old Zhou took a long breath and suddenly thought of himself when he was young. If it weren't for blindly holding back and giving in, perhaps things would be very different now. Originally, I had practiced martial arts for decades. But I am still a cow and sheep. The younger generation is to be feared. Old Zhou's enthusiasm declined, and he sold a pot of wine before slowly leaving. Behind the counter, old Jiang looked at Jiang Ming with great interest and said, "Your image has been completely destroyed in the town. Even if it's difficult to clarify now, don't you care? If there is a demand, there must be a sacrifice. What I am seeking now is purity, and what I am sacrificing is image." Jiang Ming savored the old wine one by one, feeling extremely comfortable at this moment. Old Jiang suddenly said, "So, you never intended to follow Old Scar?" Old Scar. Jiang Ming stood up with a bowl in his hand and smiled, "What kind of thing is it? Let's go." He finished his last sip of wine and turned to leave. Old Jiang looked at the figure gradually disappearing from the street corner, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Terrifying young man. Regardless of any image or face, one can give up anything else for their own goals. Old Jiang too felt a bit cold in his body, and he could see that Jiang Ming really didn't care about Old Scar. The previous toast was just a play for the sake of purity. The essence of this young man may be even more terrifying than the bullish image he pretends to be half a month later. In the bamboo fence courtyard, bamboo chairs creaked and swayed, and the mottled sunlight shone through the lush leaves, hitting Jiang Ming's body. He rested one hand under his head and held up a tattered, yellowed book, reading it with relish. The book tells the story of a young man who practices medicine and accumulates kindness. Step by step becomes a doctor. And eventually becomes a palace physician and soars to the sky. From Jiang Ming's perspective, it is a poorly written and enjoyable book, but fortunately, there are many introductions about various aspects of the Yan kingdom in this book, which has allowed Jiang Ming to understand many customs and traditions. When you're tired of reading, just cover your face with a book and take a nap. It wasn't until evening that he lazily stood up, picked up the books that had fallen on the ground, brushed away the dust and put them away. Then he started the fire, boiling water while kneading and rolling out 2-finger-wide noodles. Stir-fried wild vegetables and dried bamboo shoots in lard in the mountains, covered them with boiled and cooled white noodles, and sprinkled them with chili sauce that flowed from the old ginger head. Jiang Ming started to eat with a big gulp. A bowl of noodles was all eaten, and Jiang Ming closed his eyes with satisfaction. This. What the hell is life? Bai Yi, open your stomach and eat. He stroked a white rabbit at his feet, gnawing on carrots, and said with great enthusiasm, "If I, Jiang Ming, take a bite, I will never starve you." Goo 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 goo. The white rabbit was full of spirituality, rubbing against Jiang Ming's pants legs, and eating with a click became even more satisfying. Calculating my savings, it's almost 4 to 5 taels of silver. Jiang Ming calculated while masturbating the rabbit. Archery is also difficult to improve in the short term. It's about time to learn martial arts from Mr. Zhou. Since the last incident, Jiang Ming's life has become much more comfortable. The newly cultivated Bai Yi is very clever, leading him back onto the path of prosperity. And now when he returned to town after collecting the medicine, the officials also turned a blind eye to him. When setting up a stall in the medicine market, Old Scar no longer paid him for the venue, but instead called him brothers and sisters. Jiang Ming knew that Old Scar was also using him to consolidate his power in Ping'an town. After all, even the newly appointed Jiang villain and Old Scar were brothers. Who dares to provoke this increasingly powerful Scar Lord? However, Jiang Ming doesn't care. No matter how much he earns now, no one in the town dares to trouble him anymore. That's the best thing. Doo-doo-doo-doo. The sound of knocking on the door rang out, and outside the half-tall and dilapidated wooden door, a furry boy with thick eyebrows and big eyes was waving his hand at Jiang Ming. "Ah Ming, tomorrow morning by the Hongyun River, Miss Wang is still willing to be released." He shouted loudly, "Let's watch my Fei perform." As he spoke, he lifted the rotten fishing net in his other hand. Jiang Ming smiled and said loudly, "Be careful not to return empty-handed." "Hey, I've been practicing for a month now, wait and see." Fei chuckled and ran away, playing with his fishing net, like dragging a rotten kite that couldn't fly. Jiang Ming shook his head speechlessly. This Fei was the same kid who went to the tavern last time and hurriedly made a harpoon after hearing that Miss Wang was going to be released. Later on, I found a rotten fishing net somewhere and practiced catching fish in the river every day. It is interesting that in the town, except for a very small number of people such as Lao Zhou who knew the truth about Jiangda's villain, everyone else avoided Jiang Ming, but this Fei did not care at all and maintained a relationship with Jiang Ming as always. Even if some people say that Fei is trying to hold on to the thigh of the wicked Jiang, he doesn't argue and just does what he likes, without any change due to the words of others. If you have nothing to do, it's good to go catch fish tomorrow. Jiang Ming rubbed his chin and happened to be learning martial arts from Mr. Zhou. He brought 2 big fish as a gift to meet him, which was a great way to save face. The next day, the Hongyun River connects the city of Dayun and the Yunmeng Mountains, and ordinary people don't know where it goes further. Pingyuan Town is built along the mountain and is not far from the Hongyun River. Early that morning, many people gathered by the river, and Jiang Ming also stood by the river eating corn cobs, looking around. When people are idle, that's all. I want to join in any activity. Hey, here it is. Suddenly, an excited voice sounded from the top of a big tree. End of this chapter.